I have an idea in my head. I would like to get that idea from my head into your head. Now, we can't hook up USB cables between brains yet. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a deep breath. And when I exhale, I'm going to move my lips and my tongue and these little membranes called vocal cords in such a way to create slight pressure differences in the gas in front of me. Those slight pressure differences will cause the molecules to push on their neighbors and push on their neighbors and push on their neighbors. And a wave of pressure is going to travel away from me at what we call the speed of sound. In diatomic nitrogen at standard temperature and pressure, that is about 700 miles an hour. So at 700 miles an hour, this wave of pressure is going to travel away from me in every direction and eventually get to your head. Those pressure differences will cause very small motions in your eardrum. A delicate series of muscle and bone will amplify those motions to eventually push on a fluid in your inner ear. The small motions of that fluid will create tiny motions in these hairs in your inner ear, and eventually that will create electrical stimulation in your brain. Now, if I'm lucky, that electrical stimulation will be interpreted by your brain as sound. If I'm really lucky, even words and ideas. Now, this miraculous process I've just described, it's tried and true. It's how our species has communicated information and ideas for millennia. And it's great. It's a fine way to do it, but you can imagine sometimes it breaks down. Maybe you can't hear me that well right now. Maybe you don't speak my language that well. Maybe at this point in the night you have to go to the bathroom so bad you just can't concentrate. Maybe when I use the phrase diatomic nitrogen and standard temperature and pressure, that threw you for a loop and you're still trying to come back from that. The point is, it does break down. I'm a teacher, and what we teachers call direct lecture or learning by listening sometimes is great. I think we've all been in a great lecture, and I think we've all seen the power of speaking and in preaching and all that. I don't think anyone faults Abraham Lincoln for not having a snazzy enough PowerPoint at the Gettysburg Address. Sometimes it works. But as a teacher, my job isn't just to talk. My job is to maximize learning for all of my students. So I stumbled upon something a few years ago called learning by doing. Now, of course, learning by doing isn't anything new. If you've ever learned how to ride a bike or play a game of cards, chances are you learned that by doing. In fact, MIT was founded over 150 years ago on the whole concept of learning by doing. Their motto, mens et manus, means mind and hand. It's about the connection between learning and doing. So learning by doing isn't anything new, but I think there are two reasons why learning by doing deserves new attention in the 21st century. Number one, the floodgates are open. Not long ago, there were a few gatekeepers of information doling out information as they saw fit. Your parents, the church, your schools. That is no longer the case. Now that the floodgates are open, we are now awash in information. All of the world's knowledge is in our pockets. That means as a teacher, I'm wasting my breath and I'm wasting my students' time if I stand up in front of my kids and say, guess what, there's these things called black holes and I'm going to tell you all about them. There's already somebody way smarter than me on YouTube talking about black holes. So my job has shifted. Now, I no longer take my time to design and write lectures. What I do now is I design and create experiences for students to discover their own new knowledge. Second reason why learning by doing deserves new attention in the 21st century is it breaks down this direct transfer model that I need to be an expert in something before I can teach it to kids. That is also no longer the case. The other day, one of my kids came up to me and said, Dr. Shields, can you teach us about neural networks and machine learning? I said, what's that? I said, I don't know, but let's Google it. I don't think that makes me a bad teacher. It just means that I can now teach kids stuff that I don't know. My role has shifted. In fact, a couple days after that, one of my kids came up to me and says, hey, Dr. Shields, can you teach me how to calculate the center of lift for this 3D printed airplane I'm making? I actually know how to do that. But rather than say, sure, let me tell you, I said, let me see if I can help you figure that out. And the reason for that is I have seen the power of learning alongside my students as they discover knowledge, and it's much more meaningful, much more lasting, and much more relevant than me just spoon-feeding information to my kids. I'm what they call an educational perennialist, which means that I don't think the what of information is going to change much, of learning is going to change much anytime soon, but the how absolutely must. In the 21st century, those who are happiest are not going to be those who have the most information. It's going to be those who, awash in information, are the best prepared to analyze that information, critique it, parse through it, make understanding and wisdom from it, and perhaps even to meaningfully add to it. Thank you.